Welcome to the CS Joseph podcast. I'm your host, CS Joseph. This is season 14, part 3, episode 5, the ESFJ and INTJ natural pair. Now, before I begin, and this is, premium lecture, thank you all for being here, and thank you all for subscribing and being paying members. I'm very thankful for the Eco Hacker community and everything that you folks are doing by proving your support by being paid members. Thank you very much. So, there is a theme, an overall theme that I would like you folks to actually think about when it comes to ESFJ and INTJ relationship. Definitely, it is a relationship that I am jealous of. Envious, right? I'm actually super envious. I'm super envious of ESFJ men and their ability to just completely 100% take away all of the anxiety away from INTJ women. Now, granted, that's kind of backwards for me to say, because if you read Mating in Captivity by Esther Perel, and I believe it's chapter 3 or 4, which talks about how closeness actually destroys sexual intimacy entirely, such that when a person gets closer and closer to their partner, and it's usually because of beta males within the United States of America, men in general are getting a little too close and too interconnected to their women, and then as a result of that, their women lose all sexual attraction for them entirely, and it destroys sexual intimacy. So they're trading one form of intimacy for another. Sucks to be ESTPs and INFJs. Really sucks to be them with their cognitive origin of intimacy and connectedness. I do not envy them. I will never envy them, because literally they're basically caught in a forever push and pull for the rest of their lives, and they have no freaking clue. Well, guess what? There's still a very similar risk between the ESFJ and INTJ if the ESFJ just happens to be a man and the INTJ happens to be a woman. Because ESFJs just have this amazing magical ability to take away all of the anxiety away from the INTJ. And guess what? The INTJ also has the ability to take all of the anxiety away from the ESFJ. Oh wait, that's the whole purpose of the natural pair. That's what they do. They actually destroy each other's anxieties, and there just is no anxiety whatsoever. And which is pretty cool. Which is super cool that this is the relationship of ease. The overall theme of this relationship, the overall theme of the ESFJ and the INTJ is the following: service versus submission. Service versus submission. Service versus submission means literally everything in this relationship, with the ESFJ providing service and the INTJ providing submission to the ESFJ. That is absolutely, fundamentally beautiful. Absolutely beautiful for them. INTJs, out of all the 16 types, are actually, believe it or not, the most submissive of the 16 types. Isn't that funny? Isn't that amazing? Yeah, and actually why I am envious of ESFJ men consistently, because it is so easy for them to get INTJ women to submit to them, insanely easy. Whereas it's actually pretty hard for an ENTP to do, especially very extremely intimidating UDUF ENTP who lacks a lot of life experience in terms of being masculine and whatnot. And while I could say that, yes, I'm far more masculine now than I ever have been, and definitely on that journey to improving my masculinity constantly every single day of my life, guess what? I still have many decades of failing in that area. So most of my experience is covered in doing it the wrong way, and then ultimately either alienating INTJ women or not being able to hold their interest whatsoever. I remember I was dating years back, and she talked about how she wants a masculine man, she wants somebody she could submit to, and honestly, I have to admit, I really wasn't that guy. I really wasn't that guy in those days. I wasn't really somebody that would be worth submitting to, because I just didn't quite get it, right? And, since then, I've definitely gained the skills. I kind of understand a little bit more about the rules of engagement, especially when it comes to INTJ women. but it's taken me a long time to actually grow and come to that basic understanding. Whereas ESFJ men, they just kind of all they got to do is just show up. I'm not even kidding. They just have to show up. That's it. It's just showing up. As long as they show up, they basically automatically win. Those bastards getting in on my golden pair like that. You know what I'm saying? It's just they just do it. I mean, obviously, this is why they're my conflict type, right? You know, but and it's true. Like in my life experience, you know, I have noticed that like if I was going to be competing with an INTJ for her affections, then definitely the ESFJ would actually beat me every single time. But what does that say about the ESFJ? Does it say that it's a great archetype, or does that mean that I was just a fucking loser? I think probably the latter is more accurate. Honestly, I really do think the latter is more accurate. But anyway, regardless, INTJs are the number one source of submission. And then also ESFJs are a great source of servitude or service. And obviously, you know, this can be an issue for ESFJ men, but it also means that ESFJ women are like literally the most sought after women out there. And as much as you could also say INTJ women to some extent are the most sought after out there as well. It's like the ESFJ woman is sought after by the SE user men, and the INTJ woman is sought after the SI user men. It's kind of interesting that this particular natural pair literally is like one of the most passionate, one of the most passionate pairs of them all. And it's so interesting to me to actually watch these two get together and flourish with one another. It's always so fascinating, and I always learn so much about both of the archetypes. So the natural pair offers, as usual, stability and fun. The theme of the natural is ease. It is the easiest relationship. And honestly, people need to have easy relationships. They really need to have easy relationships. I was actually accused recently by a woman in my life telling me that... literally telling me that I'm a pussy because I desire to have an easy relationship. Wow, what a very fascinating perspective, which I guess it would be a very manipulative thing to say to an introverted sensing inferior like myself, since it's preying upon my fear of being weak. But at the same time, like, you know, as a man, like, definitely need to have an easy relationship. Having an easy relationship is important because when I come home after a hard day at work, you know, I want to have, you know, a great time, you know, underneath my own roof, or a great time when I'm with the presence of any woman. So of course, having an easy relationship is very central to any man or male perspective. So this is why the natural pair, in my opinion, should be the foundation. It should be, in my opinion, the very first relationship that a man seeks out. And I've recently come to that conclusion. The natural pair is absolutely, like, it is the first relationship a man should seek out. Now, a woman, no. It doesn't really matter. But for a man, absolutely, the first relationship he should seek out, and use that relationship to build a stable foundation for his life, right? And then have family and whatnot before extending out to potentially other women and having additional relationships with other girls at the same time. But definitely at the center, you have the natural pair, and you build everything around the natural pair, basically. You could even argue that your natural pair woman would be your queen bee of all of your other bees, basically. You know, be yourself, which is the theme of the natural pair, right? So just, you know, keep that in mind. Keep that very in mind. And, you know, unlike the golden pair, it's not intrinsically volatile or inherently challenging like the pedagogue, which is the companion type. And and you know, while the golden pair provides an insane amount of affection, it does have this tendency of expecting compatibility and origin, but the natural desires compatibility and cognitive origins, meaning the natural ends up being more freely giving. So what is that? Let's unpack that for a second. So basically, like, when you're in a relationship, like a golden pair, a natural pair, or like any of the non-fling relationships, basically, where you have emotional compatibility and sexual compatibility present at the same time within the context of the relationship between the egos, okay? When that is actually happening, the golden pair has high expectation where it expects the compatibility and it also expects to have an origin exchange. So like for me, it's like reverence and satisfaction. If I'm with a golden pair INTJ, there would be an exchange of origins, there would be an exchange of compatibility, and that is expected. And if that doesn't happen within the context of the relationship from an affection point of view, then it's going to blow up. It's going to fail. Whereas the natural has no such expectations. The natural does not expect full-on compatibility. It does not expect cognitive origin changes. The natural just freely gives it to you. Doesn't and also freely takes from you too. It doesn't have these expectations. It's not putting these expectations onto you. That's why the natural pair is so natural. It's as easy as breathing. And I know I've said that about the golden pair in the past, but it really is not as easy as breathing when compared to the natural pair, right? So please understand these concepts. And within the context of the ESFJ and the INTJ, the ESFJ cognitive origin being discovery, the INTJ cognitive origin being reverence, and then they are exchanging each other's origins to one another through the context of their relationship. It's all based on desirability. It is not based on expectation. Whereas the golden pair absolutely is based on expectation. That's something that I haven't really discussed very much at length, and I really wanted to put a difference on that. Now, obviously, when you're looking at psychological type, especially from a Jungian analytical psychology perspective, four sides dynamics, 4SD, ego hacking, all these different things that we talk about within the ego hacker community here, is that being a man or being a biological man or a biological woman actually really changes the expression of your persona or your type, basically. And that includes, basically with relationships. So you have masculine idealism, which is something that, men bring to the table, and you have female solipsism that women bring to the table. Masculine idealism is a man's inherent ability to be selfless. It's just the innate ability to be selfless. And the female solipsism is a woman's innate ability to be selfish or entitled, basically. Now, most people think I'm being an asshole when I say that, but I'm really not. Female solipsism is actually insanely required. It is insanely necessary. It is very necessary. Women just kind of understand how to enjoy life, and with masculine idealism getting in the way, men often don't enjoy life as much as women do, and through female solipsism, they actually learn how to enjoy life, which is entirely necessary within the context of this relationship. An ESFJ woman with the cognitive origin of discovery, constantly trying to discover life so that the INTJ man is not stuck being a workaholic. Very great. Very nice, right? Or an INTJ woman being very selfish with her status and her prestige and revering herself, and other people revering her and gaining respect for herself could actually tend to make her ESFJ man far more respectable, and then actually make sure that his service is in service to the correct things instead of the wrong things, basically, for level of priority. Because as she is utilizing him to increase her status, he also is going to have his status increase as well as open up a lot more opportunities for him than he had previously. Okay, that is an example of how female solipsism can be very beneficial to this particular relationship. Masculine idealism, the ESFJ is insanely selfless. It's already the most selfless of the types, but then it's get even more selfless with being an ESFJ, constantly being about that provider, provisioning, protection, parental investment. Of course, the beta traits are very strong within the ESFJ archetype, but also insanely self-sacrificing to the point of being willing to lay down his life for his woman, which is also a really big deal. The INTJ masculine idealism, they can both these types as men can be huge workaholics, by the way. This relationship, this natural pair is the natural pair of workaholism. I always told, I told you folks, that the ENTJ and the ISFJ was the power couple. Well, this is the work couple. This is the hard work couple. And this entire couple is all about passionate hard work and getting things done. These are the go-getters. And when they work together, they are the go-getting team. And literally, it's very difficult for people to, outdo them. The level of performance from this pair is insane. It's absolutely insane. And they can just get things done. It's like It's the relationship of completion, basically. They will get things very, very completion. So based on that, also like you have cognitive looping. And remember what cognitive looping is. It's when the hero and the child get together because the parent function is not really developed, so it's not able to get between the hero and the child hanging out inside of your head. But then also because it's a natural pair, your child function is hanging out with their hero, and their hero is hanging out with your child function, which is also creating an external cognitive looping between both those types. And when you're cognitive looping, you're actually way more prone to immaturity and irresponsibility and enablement than ever, which is the number one risk of the golden pair. Basically enabling each other to death, or enabling each other to the death of the relationship itself. That is a huge risk. That is a huge problem at all times. So, as a result, cognitive looping makes men in the natural pair more idealistic, and it makes women more solipsistic, basically, because they're just enabling each other. They're enabling these traits of each other on a consistent basis, and that can be very problematic. So, and don't forget, how people assess each other in terms of relationship. Women view men as a business, okay? That's because women are attracted to men because they want one thing from men, and that is judgment. And it takes a while for a woman to determine if a man has proper, sober judgment, right? Just like one of my favorite verses in the Bible. It is written, God does not give us a spirit of fear, but of power and sober or sound judgment, right? That's pretty cool, right? I'm paraphrasing when I say that verse, but the point is that this is why it takes so long for women to fall in love with a man, because it's like, hey, I need to identify if this man actually has proper judgment. It takes a long time because judgment, it's really hard to assess judgment. Whereas with a woman, men view women as art. If they're beautiful, they're very artsy already. Like they are a walking piece of art as is, So because men view women as art, it's very easy for men to fall in love with a woman or to be attracted to her or to have a crush on her. It's extremely, extremely easy. But whereas women viewing men as a business, it's really difficult because they care about judgment, whereas women are highly perceptive. That's why they have the feminine mystique or female intuition, and men are oblivious because they lack that perception entirely. So men are oblivious because they lack the perceptive capabilities of women, but however, men bring to the table decision making and proper sober decision making, which means women lack good decision making. They lack sober judgment. This is why their judgment is actually based on emotions and not actually reality for the most part. So, and that's ultimately why you cannot take a woman at her word, not because she is a liar, but because she will change your mind constantly because her decisions are being made with emotions first instead of, logic or rationale first, like as men do it. But because men lack perceptive abilities and women have the perceptive abilities, men are oblivious. So in general, and this is why, when I'm coaching women in terms of relationships, I'm like, literally spell it out for your man. He's oblivious. I'm oblivious. Like, that's one of my problems. One of the greatest gifts that you as a woman can do for like an ENTP is just spell it out to him that you have a crush. Like, for example, a woman in my life, she was interested in me, and she was interested in me for like a long time, but like nothing happened between her and I at all until she just had the guts to just spell it out for me. And as soon as she spelled it out for me, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, we could definitely look into this, and things, spiral up from there. Like that's just reality. Yeah, I may be an ENTP and might be able to see into the future and whatnot. Yeah, sure, I got SE Demon, which can be really interesting with my personal performance and also being unaware of what other people are doing. But the reality of the situation is I'm still a man, which means I'm all about judgment, and my perception really sucks. This is why an ENTP woman can out-perceive me. An ENTP woman would actually be able to see into consequences a lot better with her intuition, a lot better than me. But then again, no ENTP woman would be able to out-debate me, because that's a fact too. because I have superior judgment, right? So women have superior perception, men have superior judgment, and that's ultimately what causes those people to actually be attracted to each other. Men are attracted to that superior perception women have. Women are attracted to the superior judgment that men have. That's just a fact. And the thing is that in order to actually maintain a really good relationship is that men and women have to prove to each other that they have that superior judgment or that they have that superior perception, right? So why when men go to the gym and they work really hard and they get that six-pack, well, when they have that six-pack, that proves to women that that's not fake. You can't fake that. And that shows to women that they have proper judgment, or sober judgment, or capable of having sober judgment because they're capable of making decisions to actually get their goals reached, which is excellent. So, now before, I think I actually might talk about how they view each other in terms of just before I go into the test of the critic, because I think that fits really good in there. But again, this leads to the perspective of hey, if you're an ESFJ, if you're an INTJ, and you're looking at women, between business or art, or men between women view men as a business, men view women as an art. You have to understand it still has to pass the test of the critic. And the test of the critic, this is how this relationship actually gets started, right? And it's called the test of the critic. Now, many times I've said it's pretty decently easy to get into a golden pair, but it's very hard to maintain a golden pair. Whereas it's the opposite of the natural pair. It's a little bit harder to get into a natural pair, but it's very easy to maintain the natural pair, which is true, which is very true. And again, it's because the golden pair has those high expectations, whereas the natural pair, they just desire those things. It's not necessarily expected. And if you don't meet my expectations, we can't be in a relationship anymore. And now I'm going to break up with you. And then all of a sudden we reconcile and we'll be good together for the rest of the time. But it's the relationship of reconciliation, whereas the natural pair doesn't have to deal with that bullshit. The natural pair gets to skip over all that crap, which is pretty nice. But conversely, the natural pair does have some other problems. It can get so close. It is the one relationship out of the 16 types where the people can get so close that it eliminates all sexual tension entirely. And then as a result of that lack of sexual tension, there is no sexual activity. So the natural pair is actually extremely at risk of not having any real sexual contact between the lovers. That sucks. So the natural pair, you guys have to actually facilitate space between one another in order to guarantee that you actually have a sexual relationship, or else the relationship will break down and you will lose it. That's one big caveat of the natural pair that you're going to have to look for. But the test of the critic is basically when the ESFJ's critic function, which is extroverted sensing critic, which is about critiquing their own performance and critiquing the performance of others. If they see that the INTJ is not performing at a higher level than themselves, the ESFJ just cannot be in a relationship with the INTJ. Conversely, the INTJ's introverted thinking critic, they're so critical towards their own thinking that if they actually believe that they are smarter in terms of their own thinking and handling the truth and their logic is stronger than that of the ESFJ, the INTJ can't even be around the ESFJ at all. That's known as the test of the critic. And the test of the critic, so when women view men as a business and they're looking for that judgment, basically, they want to see proof of proper judgment based on their critic function assessing the level of aspiration in their inferior function. Because if there is aspiration in their inferior function, that means that man has proper proof of proper judgment. Conversely, with men viewing women as art, it's the same approach, because being able to test that perceptive ability, he'll test her perceptive capability based on the level of aspiration of her inferior function. So basically, inferior functions already have to reach some type of aspirational development in order for the natural pair to even take place to begin with. And that's what the test of the critic is. More on that later. Let's actually talk about some of the inner workings of the relationship itself in terms of cognitive origin, etc. So let's look at that. So cognitive origins. Cognate origins work a little bit different in golden pairs, and I know I've said in the past that, like, your octogram can also really impact how origins are exchanged within the context of a golden pair versus a natural pair. Within a golden pair, at least so far as we can tell, especially with an atypical, we got to do a little bit more research with typicals, but with atypicals being SDSF and UDUF octograms, those specific octograms, we need to be aware that, if you're in a golden pair, they need to be identical. You need to have an identical octogram in order for it to work out. Whereas within the context of the origins, for the natural pair, you want to have the opposite octogram. So if I'm UDUF, I would need to be with an SDSF person. So that's just kind of how that is, like from an octogram point of view. So that's great. That's great. We have that established. Now, the thing is, though, is that the natural pair adds an additional layer of interesting. So, like, for example, the INTJ is all about reverence, right? And brings reverence to the relationship. And the ESFJ getting reverence within the relationship, basically, it ends up providing a side effect where they end up getting their purpose, their secondary cognitive origin of purpose within their ISFP shadow. Conversely, the same thing happens too. When ESFJs bring discovery to the relationship, the INTJ ends up getting something better than satisfaction. Satisfaction is their secondary origin. And this is extremely important. It gets even more important, especially when you consider this amazing secret piece of paper that I have right now, which is just as valuable to me as my original type grid paper that I hung up on my wall. And it carries on it the secrets of cognitive functions and cognitive origins and how things move around in our heads to the point where it's like unbelievable, right? So reverence from the INTJ, and they show reverence. This is why INTJs are the source of submission. And because they are submitting to the ESFJ is able to actually walk in their purpose. And because they're walking their purpose, the ESFJ ends up being able to direct the relationship in terms of discovery because they are able to discover. They have the space to discover within the context of the relationship because the INTJ is basically providing reverence to the ESFJ because the INTJ is a source of reverence. Whereas like the ESFP is a consumer of reverence, right? But the INTJ is a source of reverence, a very beautiful source of reverence, which is awesome. Definitely something I could use in my life because I'm a UDUF ENTP, and that means I require 2 helpings of reference compared to 1 helping of satisfaction from a human nurture perspective, because my ISFJ subconscious has basically been entirely abandoned. I don't really use my subconscious very much for anything, and that's probably going to be something that I'm going to have to continue to develop over time. I think that's why I'm trying to hire a physical therapist or a masseuse, because God knows I need them. Anyway, now... And then with the ESFJ, providing discovery and constantly providing discovery, that actually brings something more to the INTJ other than satisfaction. It also helps the INTJ gain reverence because the more life experience that the INTJ has in their introverted sensing demon, they're less likely to take shortcuts. They're more likely to put in more effort to things. So via cognitive orbit, the demon function of SI demon actually ends up increasing the performance capabilities of extroverted sensing inferior. And when that happens, which is awesome, when that happens, the INTJ also gains more reverence for themselves because people are noticing them, respecting them, there for them, not banning them on a consistent basis because, it's just, yeah, it's awesome. It's very awesome when that happens because it's like, hey, I perform better, so I get more reverence. Yay. And the ESFJ is able to help provide them that because through discovery, and it's just these origins complement each other very much. And, like what the INTJ ends up revering can be a source of exploration for the ESFJ. And then what the ESFJ has explored can show the INTJ ways to obtain more reverence. That is basically what we're trying to say here. And, basic origins, in terms of like the primary origins, the ego origins, it's basically met through the optimistic cognitive loops and the secondary cognitive loops for the pessimistic loops. So cognitive looping is everything to this particular relationship. So it's when the hero and the child, get together, because the child is like in awe of the hero. Oh, it's my childhood hero. Yay. The other person is their childhood hero, basically. And then you're their childhood hero. And it's just like, you just look at each other in awe, like all the time. That's what the natural pair is. They're always in awe of each other. I'm always in awe of, like, for example, ISFPs and their art and how creative they are and how sensitive they are and how cute they are and just like everything about them. I'm just like even the men, I just melt around them. I just can't help it, because they're just so fascinating and so amazing and so intuitive, yet they're so concrete at the same time, because they're any tricksters, just out of control. But it's great because they're any tricksters able to consider things that I never even thought of, because my any hero can get lazy and rest on his laurels because it's a prideful asshole sometimes, and the any trickster's like, well, wait. But wait, there's more. 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 And it's like I'm in this unlimited loop of the price is right, and I'm doing my showcase, and Bob Barker is right there telling me my showcase, and he constantly is saying, but wait, there's more. But wait, there's more. But wait, there's more. Over and over and over. That's what ISFPs do for me, and it's pretty cool. I like it. So it just doesn't stop, but I don't want it to. I don't want it to. Well, guess what? ESFJ and INTJs have a similar thing, because the INTJ trickster is like ethics. Ethics is so subjective. And the FE hero of the ESFJ is like, how is it possible you're more ethical than me? How is it possible that you think of ethics more than I do? Constantly. What? It's so weird. And then the INTJ, or the ESFJ's trickster is NI trickster, and it's like, oh, the INTJ is like, oh, you're making all these decisions. Wow, you really want a lot of things. Oh, wow. Why do you want that? Oh, maybe I want that too. And it's just this, wow, your desire is just like endless. Are you like completely endlessly passionate with your NI trickster? I didn't know this. I didn't know it was possible. It's like this endless source of passion in my life. It's like, what the hell just happened? And again, this is amazing. But, their origins, though, cognitive loops, how these functions interact together when they're looping, it's really what they can do to get their origins. Like, for example, with the INTJ, it's like, I want what I'm in the mood for. I'm in the mood to want this. I want what I feel like. I want what I feel. 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 Then the ESFJ is like, oh, well, I'm going to get you what you want because you feel like it. You like what, like, I want what I like. I want what I like. The INTJ is like, well, yeah, you do want what you like. You do want what you like. You do want what you like. But then again, all of a sudden they start looping together to each other externally, and it starts looking a little bit different. But the FI child's like, I like this, I like this, I like this. And the FE hero's like, yes, you do, yes, you do, yes, you do. I'll get it for you. Yes, you do, yes, you do, yes, you do. I'll get it for you, right? Here, discover this. Oh, you didn't even know that you like this. Here, discover this, discover this, discover this, discover this, right? The INTJ is like, hey, I know what I want, I know what I want. And then the ESFJ is like, yeah, you do want that, you do want that, you do want that. And then the INTJ is like, well, I want you, I want you, I want you, I want you. And then any child's like, yay, I want it all the time. And then like their brain melts from happiness. Mind blown. It's just their brain explodes from it. It's so good. So good. So anyway, we already talked about how to get into the natural pair, but again, like the test of the critic, guys, they have to have pre-existing aspiration, and then be able to make sure that the critics are looking at the other person, and then basically the other person's inferior function just has to be obviously stronger than their critic function. Like it's super important. It's a really, really big deal. So yeah, that's just kind of, in general how it goes. So, but to be on that though, like another way of looking at it is like when it comes to the test of critic, the general theme, and I've said this many times, is that The other person in the relationship would be successful in life even if we'd never met. That's ultimately the main theme in terms of understanding the test of the critic and what it actually means and what to do with it. That's where it's coming from. That's how it matters. So, but yeah, their inferior function must be more developed than my critic. Okay, so cool. We're gonna move on to the next section here because we've already basically gone through that. All right, so let's talk about the actual mechanics. Okay, so, obviously these two types are compatible. They're compatible sexually, they're compatible emotionally. When I say emotionally, it also includes with judgment compatibility, where one is able to lead the other in terms of, the sexual relationship. And by the way, if you're a man, you haven't read Don't Let Her Lead by Zach Rode, what the hell are you doing? Like, it's like a great book. And he writes great books. They're really small, tiny little books, but they're packed with so much knowledge and so little tiny little mini books that you could read them in like an hour or two. It's so great. They're only 80 pages each. So, but anyway, to the natural pair, extroverted functions always have introverted functions to consume. The natural pair excels at creating and maintaining energy. This is one of the relationships that absolutely energizes each other. I've been in a ton of relationships in my life. The majority of my relationships have actually been fling relationships. So the fling relationships, out of the 8 sexual compatibilities, 4 of those relationships are what I call the fling relationships. And that is the companion relationship. It's also the trust relationship, also known as the benefactor relationship. The companion relationship was the pedagogue relationship as well. So pedagogue, benefactor, companion, trust. And then it's also the intrigue relationship, which is also known as the supervisor relationship. And then after that relationship, it is finally the kindred relationship. And each of those relationships, they can create the energy, but they cannot maintain the energy. Because remember, you need perception functions, which is what sexual compatibility is based upon. And these are all the 8 sexual relationships. So sexual relationships are all really great at creating energy, but that doesn't mean they can maintain the energy. Okay? So creating versus maintaining is important. So energizing each other means that it creates a positive feedback loop, which means that the relationship can actually be maintained. And the relationships that are best at that are golden pairs and natural pairs. With, in my opinion, the natural pair is probably the most efficient at creating and maintaining energy in a really good equilibrium out of all of the sexual relationships, in my opinion. It is possible that technically on paper, the golden pair would be the one to do that the most, which is the affection relationship, the relationship that solves the problem of a joyless life, basically. So as a result of that, and it can create and maintain energy decently well, but I still think the natural pair is a little bit better because it's based on desire and not necessarily based on expectations, like the golden pair is. But I could be really biased in saying that because I am Heart Temple after all. So, sue me, right? Anyway, within the natural, each type's hero function is pumped by the other person's child function. The natural is magnetic because each child idolizes the other's hero. The theme of the natural is the childhood hero, as we stated before. The hero child creates the fun, and the parent inferior function creates protection and safety. The parent provides relief to the other person's inferior. And let me tell you something, folks. Like presently in my life right now, I mean, shoot, I could use that. I am a stressy, and having extroverted sensing parent around to be that relief, that stress relief, is super mega important. So and that's just me saying for myself, but like in terms of the ESFJ and the INTJ, it's the same thing, because the SI parent literally has this thing where it's really able to tolerate the eventual failure or to pick up the INTJ when they fall. It's already able to be there, and it's already doing that. So basically, at that, from that perspective, I mean, that's amazing. That's why I'm envious of ESFJ men taking away all the performance anxiety out of INTJ women, for example. But then, you also look at it from, extroverted thinking parent takes provides a ton of relief to introverted thinking inferior, because introverted thinking inferior is afraid or having anxiety, truth anxiety. It's like, I might not know what's true or false. And even TI inferior is very aware that sometimes it often makes decisions based on whether or not people already accept the idea or not. Extroverted thinking parent comes in play and basically replaces the extroverted feeling hero's influence upon the TI inferior, and actually helps the TI inferior think rationally, think out loud, or provides proper input to the TI inferior so that the TI inferior can think about things in a very innocent but yet practical way. And it ends up taking all of the insecurity away from the ESFJ as well. That's why they just work out together so well. So let's look at the optimistic function loops, basically. So introvert intuition hero and extrovert intuition child, which is the reverence loop. NI hero gets endless freedom and desirability from extrovert intuition child. The ESFJ, so long as they feel comfortable, will not only let the INTJ do what they want, they will help them do it. Any child, extrovert intuition child, reveres the willpower and focus of the INTJ, allowing the INTJ to lead the way. Unless, of course, the ESFJ is leading in terms of discovery. So the INTJ leads in reverence, but the ESFJ will lead in discovery, which is extroverted feeling hero down to the introverted feeling child of the INTJ. And the INTJ looks up to the heroic compassion and social skill of the ESFJ. Extroverted feeling hero is always in tune with the INTJ's moods and is happy to let FI child show them their moral philosophy. Equipped with the INTJ's introverted feeling, the ESFJ is able to experience life through a different lens. And, that's amazing. That's amazing that they are able to do this. And that's just ultimately how, their optimistic functions are actually exchanging cognitive origins and helping each other reach their cognitive origins, that which they are seeking out the most in life. But pessimistic functions do that as well. So you have extroverted thinking parent from the INTJ and introverted thinking inferior from the ESFJ, which is still a reverence loop. And the INTJ's extroverted thinking parent provides consistent, high-quality input to the ESFJ. Extroverted thinking parent is attentive to the ESFJ's thinking and asks pointed questions to help TI inferior think more deeply. The INTJ gains reverence by being the intellectual guide and teacher to the ESFJ, and the ESFJ absorbs TE parent standards. The other thing is, too, the ESFJ becomes insanely brilliant and unlocks the powers of their subconscious. It's one of the reasons why, a natural pair, even for like a UDUF person like me, really, really helps bring a lot of healing to my mind so that maybe I could actually gain access to my ISFJ side. That's a really, really, really big deal. And then you have the introverted sensing parent to extroverted sensing inferior, which is the discovery pessimistic loop. Introverted sensing parent becomes the rudder for the sensual discovery in the relationship. The INTJ looks to the ESFJ to show them what kind of experience they would like to receive. Then the SI parent is patient in providing feedback to the INTJ's performance as they discover together. But when I say patience, I'm really talking about tolerance for failure. INTJs are so afraid of failure that they'll take shortcuts and do anything they can to avoid failure. With introverted sensing a parent around, they don't have to take shortcuts because they realize they have all the space in the world to fail. And that's literally all it is. The INTJ just needs to know that they have all the space in the world to fail. Especially when I'm talking to an INTJ woman and looking to her square in the eyes, and I just tell her look, you're gonna fail. Still here though. Still love you. Don't worry about it. We'll get through it together, right? And they just need someone to pick them up when they're down. Here's another thing that's so great about the natural pair. And this is a hypothesis I have. This is a hypothesis. This is not something I can prove per se, but this is something that I've come to suspect about the natural pair relationship. I believe that people or couples who are in natural pairs live the longest out of everyone. I think a person's lifespan is definitely connected to the kind of relationship that they are in. Some relationships age you. I definitely believe fling relationships age people pretty quickly. I think that the natural pair is so energizing that it actually preserves youth, it preserves the body, it preserves the longevity of the people involved in the natural pair, and I think it does it the best out of all of the 8 sexual relationships. I think the golden pair does it the second most. I think the natural pair absolutely in spades definitely increases the health and lifespan of people involved, even if they are at risk of what the natural pair is all about, which is being at risk of enablement, which we'll talk about in a second. So when the natural goes wrong, the biggest risk for every single natural pair is enablement. Enablement normalizes destructive or irresponsible behavior, right? So it's funny because the natural pair is so fun and so easy that it actually can become the relationship of irresponsibility, which kind of makes sense because the golden pair is kind of the relationship of responsibility, because you have to be way more responsible in order to maintain your golden pair, because it's the relationship of reconciliation compared to your natural pair. You can be entirely irresponsible in your natural pair and still be together. This is why they will enable each other into homelessness. And if you see homeless couples, like I said every time, that's a natural pair, straight up. So what causes enablement? That's when the hero and the child's loop never stops. This is caused by absent parent functions. For the ESFJ and the INTJ specifically, this manifests as an obsession with the future and all their plans without ever making a single dream come true, which is basically introvert intuition hero to any child, and emotional hypersensitivity, where idealism is left unchecked, leading to ignorance and mutual feelings of superiority, extroverted feeling hero, and FI child. Oh my God. Oh, enabling the FI child superiority complex. It is such a painful thing to deal with. It is a very painful thing to deal with. Now, without the parent functions being present or involved, the living virtues often end up being suppressed and the deadly sins are expressed more often. So that could be a huge issue. Because all of a sudden the INTJ is becoming insanely vainglorious, right? And they don't have, from a cognitive focus perspective, and they're not being modest enough because the ESFJ is completely enabling them, which the ESFJ in that moment is technically setting up the INTJ for failure because of the enablement. Because that FI child superiority complex is actually going to cost them all the reverence they've ever gotten in their life. And people will lose respect for them very quickly. Same thing goes with the ESFJ. When the INTJ enables the ESFJ becomes very gluttonous and destroys their health. They end up destroying each other's health entirely. Usually, ESFJ and INTJ natural pairs are obese. I've noticed this. It's very common for this relationship to be obese and actually deal with things like high cholesterol and heart disease. Serious problems. Not something I would recommend. And again, that comes from that emotional hypersensitivity. It also comes from, obsession with the future and all their plans without ever making a single dream come true because they're actually spending all their time being gluttonous, which is a problem. So the deadly sins end up actually being traded and passed over to each other as much as cognitive origins are, all because of enablement. This is a serious problem. How do you think the ESFJ is ever actually going to be generative? They're just going to be constantly consuming because the INTJ is feeding them endlessly. So without the parent functions involved, there's really no one to challenge the power of the hero, and the child just follows the hero's lead entirely. So as a result, the success or the failure of the relationship depends entirely upon the parent function, and that becomes ultimately a necessity. So while the critic is the barrier of entry to the relationship, the longer test of the parent sustains the relationship. How the natural pair maintains the relationship is known as the test of the parent. So the critic gets you into the relationship, but the parent keeps you into the relationship, right? Anyway, the parent function is testing for humility. Ultimately, humility demonstrates that each type will let the other parent's function guide their inferior function into further aspiration and further growth. Because here's the trick about the test of the critic. The test of the critic exists to determine if the inferior function of the other person is more developed than your own critic, basically. But what the test of the critic fails to do is further encourage additional growth on the part of the inferior function. That's why the parent functions are so important and so required, because the parent functions are required to continue the aspirational growth of the inferior functions. It's so vital, okay? Absolutely vital. And it accomplishes this by stopping the hero-child loops, basically. And it's also because the parent functions are also pessimistic enough that ends up putting the appropriate amount of pressure on inferior functions to ensure growth. So, for example, the SI parent. So the SI parent must interrupt the introvert intuition, extrovert intuition loop. The ESFJ must force action and tangible experience into the relationship. Only through generative action will future plans be realized. Introverted sensing parent must also put enough pressure on the INTJ to not get away with being a lousy performer. They must also hold the INTJ to a high standard of performance and be the immovable rock that the INTJ can fail upon or fall, catch them when they fall, until the extroverted sensing inferior eventually obtains excellence and success and reverence, all of that. Now, extroverted thinking parent on the part of the INTJ for the ESFJ, basically it interrupts the extroverted feeling hero to introverted feeling child loop by introducing input to expand the focus from the mere emotional to the intellectual. The INTJ standards should be the guiding post of the relationship and direct both these types toward discovering reverence through shared achievement, but also just like being organized and rational, because the ESFJ is a starter type and entirely disorganized. The INTJ's extroverted thinking parent ensures that the ESFJ is actually going to get something done, which is super important. It also, the parent function of the INTJ must also put pressure on the ESFJ to become a deep thinker who is capable of thorough analysis, instead of the ESFJ just outsourcing all of their analysis to somebody else because they can often be lazy by doing so, or by preventing an echo chamber forming in their head, or preventing them from making decisions based on old information. By providing quality input and gently leading TI inferior into new territory, the ESFJ will find the brilliance of their INTJ, or their INTP subconscious, making them that much more generative. So what does that mean exactly? It means the same thing that I say every single natural pair episode, which is the following. Every single person in a natural pair must take responsibility for the other person's personal growth. Sure, you are responsible for your own personal growth, but it is your responsibility to handle the other person's personal growth, because if you do not provide that, you are literally setting them up for failure, and you are going to enable them into the ground, potentially 6 feet under. They will follow you over the cliff. That's what the natural pair. It's so easy. You will follow each other over the cliff. It literally can turn into the blind leading the blind. So that's what the test of the parent is, because I'm not even kidding. In as much as the natural pair extends the longevity and the lifespan of people out of all of the sexual relationships, all the 8 sexual compatibility relationships, while it can do that, guess what? The natural pair is also very much a risk of death for people, because the enablement can get so bad that people literally die of enablement, like dying of cancer or heart disease, or dying of exposure because they're cold, because they've been enabled so much, or dying of abuse because they've been enabled so much. If you're in a natural pair, you must take full responsibility for the other person's growth. It is absolutely critical. So make sure that you guys are absolutely doing it. So anyway, folks, I hope you enjoyed this lecture and learned a lot. Thank you all. We love you all. And I'll see you guys on the next episode. Have a good night.